years ago, I entered a creative sewing contest. I was attempting a kimono version of Amaterasu from Okami. I didn't win. While I was happy with most of the costume, there were elements that I wanted to change. While the base was fine, I wanted a new obi. Then came along the Cosplay brand kimono, and I liked the obi on that. I wanted to use the same fabric as the previous obi as to not waste materials. The first obi was made out of cushion covers. As you can see, it's been pieced together. Fortunately, the width was the same as the required pattern piece. Next, I took some white piping and pinned it with raw edges together at the top and bottom of the obi. Sew that together using the zipper foot. Next is a decorative contrast bit. Fold it in half lengthwise and sew the long edge together. Here I'm grading the seam allowance. It reduces the bulk in one place once it's flipped. I'm doing this because the fabric I'm using is a very thick upholstery velvet. Flip it. Press it. Repeat this step for the second piece. Once done, twist it where the pattern piece indicates. Fold the center corner in a little, as indicated on the pattern piece. Press it with your iron to help keep it in its shape. Once that's done, place it on the main obi piece and sew down the two ends of the obi. You'll also have to tack it along with some hand sewing along the length to help keep it in place. Repeat with the other side. Once that's done, take the backing of the obi and put right sides together. Here I'm using some scrap quilting batting for the padding. Sew along the perimeter of the obi, leaving a gap for flipping. Hand sew the hole closed. Now for the bow. I'm using two different fabrics. Right sides together, sew the top and bottom edges of all 4 bow parts. Flip them. Baste the end edges together. Do similarly with the large bow pieces. Next, the pleats. Using my 2-pin color method, I mark where the pleats go and which part of the pleat will move. In my case, green moves and stops at red. Pin. Baste the pleat down. Repeat with the other bow half. The large bow is a bit more complicated, but I use the same method. Green pins move towards the red pins and stop. The fabric is so thick that I resorted to using small office bull clips to hold the pleats in place. Once both sides of the pleats are done, pull gently to show all the work you've done. Press it with your iron. Baste the pleat's edges together as well as a little along the pleat itself. Repeat for both sides. Fold it in half. Sew the ends together. I had to hand sew mine. Sew all 4 pieces together into a bow shape. With right sides together, sew along the sides and bottom edge of the bow end. Before flipping, always trim your corners and seam allowance. I'm grading the seam allowance here as well. Flip it, and use something pointy to get that end nice and crisp. Baste the top of the bow and press it with your iron. For the bow center, right sides together, sew the 2 long edges together. Flip and press. Once the bow is sewn together, take the bow ends and attach them to the top of the bow itself at the center. Then take the bow center and sew it tightly around the middle, completing the bow itself. Set that aside. Next is the back bow. Right sides together, sew around the perimeter, leaving a gap for flipping. Trim and flip. Hand sew the gap closed. Bad news, more pleats. But I'm using the same method to mark them out. Sew these pleats down the length of the whole pleat. For the back bow tie, right sides together, sew around the perimeter, leaving a flipping gap. Trim, and flip. Hand sew the gap closed. For the bow center, fold down 1/3 of it and wrap around the back bow. Hand sew the bow center together. Once that's done, fold the non-pleated end onto itself and tack that down with some more hand sewing. Take the front bow and attach it to the center of the obi where the decorative twist is located. Hand sew it down securely. The back bow will be attached to the far right of the obi. Once it is secured on, take 4 pants clasps and using the obi pattern piece, place and sew them at the back bow location. Then sew the coordinating clasp piece onto the other end of the obi. And you're done! I'm still slowly designing and perfecting this Okami costume. Expect more to come soon.